Hey folks, we're back with Feisty Chess. I have white against Cy Hollander on chess.com, a 15-10 game. Let's do something different. Let's go with d4, maybe play some kind of a gambit here. c3. Play a Danish. I won't play the whole hog Danish, so I'll take back with c3. Okay. This is fine. Opponent didn't want to take the gambit line, but I will actually happily take this. I have an isolated queen pawn, but I'm going to get my pieces out with tempo, at least a knight out with tempo against this queen. Okay, I'm wondering if I can get away with knight c3 immediately. Let's go with knight f3 first. I'm expecting bishop g4 here. So I could go knight c3 here. Let's look at things. I'd have to take back with my g pawn. So knight c3, bishop takes f3, g takes f3, queen takes. Okay, I'm familiar with this line in the Mora Gambit where black doesn't have a c pawn but instead has an e pawn. I think black's better here because he can get his king's bishop out and he can block a check on b5 with his c pawn. So I think I'll just go with bishop e3, and he can't really put another piece on that, and I will get my knight out with tempo. He could take over here and ruin my... Bishop e2 would have been better. He's going for this. Do I want to play with queens or without? I have a ruined structure, but the two bishops. Let's get the queens off the board here. See if I can use this advantage of the two bishops. I've got also the open G file for my rook. Half open G file. Okay. He can take that pawn, but I'll go ahead and grab up some pawns of my own. Target the f pawn here. Yeah, if he takes with the knight, I'll just recapture with my bishop and I'll get the f pawn. I'll lose the advantage of the two bishops, but it'll be opposite color bishops ending. Yeah, black definitely has an advantage here. I've misplayed the opening. I went with an opening I didn't know very well. Maybe g takes was better. Probably bishop e2 is better here. That's the main mistake I made, because once he captures with bishop takes f3, and then I go bishop takes f3, he takes with the queen. That loses his queen because I have bishop takes c6 check. Okay. Do I need to give back these bishops? Yeah, looking at knight c2 check, I believe I do need to give back the bishops. Might as well take this pawn, since I need to move my bishop anyway. We're not down a pawn, but this is a really bad positional weakness because these two pawns are on an open file. So yeah, we're not down a pawn, but it's pretty bad. But the opposite color bishops help the defender in this case. And I feel like endgames have been a kind of a strength of mine. So going in maybe with a little too much confidence here. Black's formulating a plan of what to do with his kingside pieces. Probably looking at bishop b4 check. Knight c3 is the obvious reply there. Maybe he's also thinking about knight f6. Bishop d6 also makes a little bit of sense. Okay, he's getting his knight out with tempo on my bishop. I do have a check. That also kind of corrals his knight. So I'm going to make this move, and he'll either need to step over and back rank land. Okay, which he does. The knight wants to come to c3. Very natural square. If the rooks come off the board, I think the weaknesses of my pawns are less relevant because they're very weak to rook attacks. Okay, right now he's threatening to pin my bishop and win it. So king f1 makes a lot of sense. I guess knight d5, knight e4 also makes a lot of sense here. So strikes at his bishop. Plugs up that. Yeah. Okay. That's on a safe square away from any checks, and then I could play my king up maybe to e2 and e3. At least getting it to e2 would allow me to get a rook. To connect my rooks and to maybe think about where I play each of them. Once he goes rook e8, I need to think about which diagonal to keep my bishop on. Probably keeping his knight. Do I need to be concerned about a knight coming to c4? I don't think so. Let's go back to b3. Okay, we're good on time here. Position is a little bit lackluster, but we have kept up on time. We've got quite a bit of time to play this endgame. My king might be better than his, and that might be a crucial element here. If he goes bishop e4 check, I'll just play king e2 like I want to. His bishop is good on d6 because it eyes my h2 pawn. And I'll probably have to spend a tempo to defend that pawn. Move it to h3. I could also simply castle. I could go rook d1 next turn and just recapture on d1 with my king. His rook on d4 is his most active piece. He could go knight g4 here. Hadn't considered that, but okay, he's going knight. Not g4, I'm sorry. b5. No, g4. Now he's going knight f5. Okay. Maybe the knight wants to go to h5. The knight's tough. Can't move it out of the way there. Okay, let's do this plan. Let's just get rid of his rook. If he takes, I'll recapture with my bishop, and then knight to d4 won't come with any tempos. Still got ideas of castling if we want. Or maybe it's probably a better idea to... Well, castling does look good. But it might be a better idea to get the king onto the d file. And then we're threatening to maybe take on d6 and then get our rook active on the half-open g file. That might make him put pawns on light squares, which would be good for me in an ending with opposite bishops. You could go knight h4 anyway. Looks like he's giving up control of that rook. After knight h4, I'd probably just play king e2, yeah. So he'll pick up a pawn with a fork if I take the rook now. Unless there's something after that that's beneficial for me. Rook takes, knight f3 check, king d2, knight takes. I can go king d3. I've lost a pawn, but that pawn is kind of worthless, and I've got real king activity as the board is simplifying. I'll probably take on d6 next, And he's got a weak D pawn, although it's a pass pawn. There's no need to give him a pawn. I mean, a pawn is a pawn. Even a weak one. That pawn on f3 actually guards my knight as well, so... Oh, this I did not see. Okay, this does give up a pawn. Okay, I might be forced to go into this. This will fork my bishop. We get into a rook ending. But I like my chances because of my active king. Let's make sure the concretes work out. Rook takes d4, knight takes d4. King d3. Knight takes b3. Then I've got... I think I've got... Knight takes d6. The alternative is king takes f3, and then rook d. I can skewer with my bishop. Okay, king takes f3, rook d takes e4, bishop c2 will allow me to hit, unless he goes to h4, which is very possible. He's got a check on f4, and then he can solve his problems after he saves his king. But taking the rook allows him to clear my bishop off the board. But yeah, simplifying into a rook ending. With my active king, that's got to count for something. Alright, I'm going for this. Now I make, once he takes, if he takes the bishop, key decision for me is well, I probably want to just recapture the bishop. Key decision for me is whether to recapture the knight or the bishop. My knight's a strong piece here. His bishop is 2, and his bishop can easily get to d4. sorry, e5 to simply threaten this pawn. I think I like getting rid of this bishop, going to a rook ending, where I have drawing chances. Okay, he's allowing me to improve my king. I think it's improvement. Oh no. Oh, this is an obvious tactic I missed, because once he recaptures, his knight is protected. Ooh, rough one here. Tough one. Yeah, I needed to recapture. I needed to recapture there. Let's just go here, and he's going to immediately... Okay, let's maybe try to put some kind of pressure on him. Use my active king here, but unless he makes some big mistake, I'm probably resigning soon. And if I clear off enough pawns, I might have drawing chances. I've been very lazy in playing this game, missing bishop h2. Okay, he's going in for some complications here. He needs to take the pawn with his rook. He has nothing else now. And then I'll get a pawn from him. And I'm also attacking his knight. Maybe it's worthwhile to activate my rook first. Rook e1. This is more forcing. I'm going to grab that. Expecting knight e4 check. And then if he goes for knight takes here, I may have some chances. Let's just save a pawn. This is pretty sloppy, folks. Okay. The plan is to get to f3. Ooh, okay. It's going to let me get to f3. If I go king c3, he could actually just check on d3 and easily win the king and pawn ending. So I can't allow any trades. Stormy here. Let's see if we can get to b3 and pick off those queenside pawns. Might be a good idea to play h4 first. Okay, he's threatening a fork here. On e5. Let's get to b3. He can take on h2. With either piece, probably rook. Making this a little bit interesting. Oh, this, yeah, okay. It's resigning time. I am not seeing things today. I needed to go to c4 there, c5 there. Okay. Let's look at it. Punish ourselves to get better. So, yeah, I played an opening I didn't really know what to do in, but it was reminiscent of many more Gambit lines I'm familiar with. White's slightly better here. Bishop e3 is excellent. Knight c3 is best. The immediate knight c3. Let's see what kind of lines the computer comes up with here. So the critical line is bishop takes, and then just knight takes d5. All right. Right. We're threatening that fork on c7. Bishop takes here. We get the fork in. Black saves his bishop. Bishop h5. Okay. So white's better here. Surprised white isn't more better than it is. Let's look at the material. He's up. If you don't count my knight in the corner, he's okay. I've got a rook for two pieces basically, but one of my minors is just trapped in that corner. I should be able to get out. I would think bishop f4 makes a lot of sense here, just in order to play knight here. But bishop f4 is a mistake because of bishop b4 check. Oh, and I have to bring it back to d2 anyway. So the computer likes bishop c4. And then I have f1 for my king. So the plan is we're going to play the bishop to that diagonal and try to get our knight out. Okay, still an interesting game, a very imbalanced game, but white has a good advantage. What about bishop e2 here? I assume that's good. Okay. Bishop b4, and all the lines the computer calculates, bishop b4 is the way to go. So that's the best move for black here. After bishop e3, bishop takes f3. Okay. Black has a slight advantage here. Bishop f3, queen f3, queen's trade, knight to b4. Castling, however. And then just knight to c3. Okay. I went bishop c4. That gets me in some trouble. Knight to c3. I don't care about this pawn. I'm threatening to push it if you leave it there. If you leave it alone, so knight f6 makes some sense. But a knight f6 then castle long and we get to retain that pawn. So what if black just takes? Is this a mistake? No, I castle. Okay, and this is a big mistake because of bishop h3 check. So these bishop, that light square bishop, especially since it has so many options sitting there on f1, that's basically giving away the game. With knight back here, bishop h3 check again, and we go rook takes d8, knight takes d8, and bishop f4. I understand the point of bishop f4. What about rook d1? Knight back to c6. And bishop f4 anyway. Okay, the idea is maybe knight b5. So bishop d6, giving back the pawn is the best. What if we just don't worry about that? Then there's, okay, rook d7. There's too many things that are weak. Now bishop d6. And black doesn't have to take this pawn. He can start chowing down on these on the 7th rank. Sorry, the white rook. Okay. I'd underestimated my chances here. I think I was just trying to go pawn for pawn, and if he grabs, I grab. But this is worse. I should just get out my my knight here instead. It's counterintuitive. So knight c3, and I can meet knight b4 with castling long. a2 is covered, and that fork is no longer a problem on c2. So yeah, the critical line here is really this, but I still have my two bishops. And now I can just castle and say, you can't take on f3, because my bishops are going to ravage you. Alright, I should have seen all this. It's actually similar to the themes in this particular version of the Mora Declined, which again is very similar, but instead of this pawn on c7, black has a pawn on e7. Okay, knight takes d4, rook takes d4, bishop takes f7, knight h6, bishop e6. I like that I was holding that knight there. King b8, knight d2. So we're planning to chase the rook away with knight b3. I don't know why knight d2, or maybe this allows me to castle. This allows me to castle queenside. Yeah, that's the idea. I went to c3 without thinking too much. I should have considered d2. That also watches f3 just in case. But the knight just seems to naturally flow so well to c3. Yeah, I should castle here, but knight e4 is good. Rook e8. Bishop h3, it says stay on that diagonal, but bishop b3 is still excellent. All right, I'm getting a lot of excellent, if not best moves. King f1. Oh, rook d1 is good. Rook takes d4. King e2, it kind of transposes these tactics. But rook d4 here is an inaccuracy. Bishop d5. Okay, that's one way to protect the knight. That doesn't make much sense after c6, does it? Now king f3. I am winning here. How does this work? He has to take. Doesn't he have to take? Oh, my knight is unpinned and he's on the bishop at d6. But doesn't just taking... Okay, rook d1. And then rook takes d1. And then bishop h2. And he can't take my bishop here on d5. And now my king protects him, my knight. My bishop isn't obligated to stay on d5. If he takes here, I have... Oh, knight takes d6, obviously. So he has to go get out of dodge with that bishop. And now bishop b3. And I just have an extra piece. That's a difficult line to see. I had the time. Bishop here, and then he has to find rook takes d1. Rook takes d1. Knight takes h2. f3, just guarding our knight once more. We're down a couple of pawns, so this is not ideal either. But his knight is shut out of the game, and unless he wants to give back the exchange here. So this looks like a tough nut for black to crack, white's position. How do you move your knight? I can't really put a lot of pressure on the knight. Maybe I can slide my rook to h1 and just go king. I need to make sure my knight's protected by that bishop. But I can maybe, there's a scenario where I get my rook over here and my king here, and I get two pieces, or, you know, I get the two pieces for the rook. Still, I like black's chances with those two extra pawns. One of them is passed on the outside of the board and very protectable here. And the other one's on the opposite side of the board. Yeah, and the rook is a lot stronger than you'd think in that kind of position where the only material left on the board is one rook and then two minors. Okay. Yeah, I'm just steadily losing here, and this is a big blunder. That's a big blunder. Obviously, this is the biggest mistake of the game. I needed to just grab here, and I'm just down a pawn. Remember, this pawn wasn't worth that much to lose because it was doubled isolated pawn on an open file. So my knight still sits strongly here, and he gets to move his bishop up to e5. And king c2. Oh, that doesn't look good to me. He can just take. Can't he? f3. I'm just giving away all my doubled pawns. I think knight c3 looks better. Rook g1, just counterattacking. Okay. But if bishop takes b2, I can't take here. He still guards g7. Black just... The computer just wants to give up material. Okay, but I missed all that. I mean, that would have been at least a game. I missed all that because of this interesting tactic, and you don't come across this too much, but right, I thought I can attack that knight wherever it goes, so I can attack it when the square right next to it, and it can't check me again. And that's true, but once he recaptures my knight, that's a protected square, and that's what I failed to see. So that kind of tactic I'll need to burn into my brain. And was he ever in danger of drawing here? No, he continues to play best moves or excellent moves. Yeah, king c3 takes all the fun out of the position. c4 makes more sense, but then he's got rook d5. I've got to go to b4 anyway. So that idea that I had of pushing a5 and then putting pressure on b7 didn't end up panning out. And the king position, when there's rooks and knight on the board, I've often thought that rooks and knights make great partners in chess, and it's very dangerous with rook and knight endings to try to get your king to the middle of the board, especially if there's pawns around. There's tons of mating patterns between rooks, knights, and pawns. So, and they're difficult to see many times over the board. Okay, that was the game for today. Real learning experience. Thanks for watching, folks. Wish me better luck next time. See ya.